cells are small at Supermax. The furniture is made of stone, not metal.
These are the last images of Guzman before he makes the most daring escape in recent history.
The tunnel began inside a house under construction a mile away from the prison.
In El Chapo type of confinement at the Supermax, he will be in his cell about 23 hours a day.
Who is Chapo Guzman? In short, he's a man known for no other life than a life of crime, violence, death, and destruction. And now he'll have to answer to that.
Most people would agree that Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo, is one of the biggest drug lords of all time. When he was still in power, he was the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel and responsible for smuggling enormous amounts of illegal drugs into the United States and throughout Europe. For years, he was one of the most wanted men alive. El Chapo managed to evade the authorities time after time again, and he escaped from captivity not once, but 2 different times. The first escape, in 2001, involved elaborate planning. It also involved the help of multiple corrupt prison guards and workers.
Authorities are scrambling to find out what went wrong and who was involved. More than 30 prison guards have been interrogated. And late today, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto vowed to track down Guzman. I am deeply dismayed, he said. This is certainly an affront to the Mexican state.
Once El Chapo was finally recaptured, the Mexican president assured the rest of the world that what happened before would not happen for a second time.
His arrest last year was heralded worldwide. He has now escaped from prison for a second time. Late last night, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman broke out of a maximum security prison about 60 miles from Mexico City.
But we all know now that this was a promise that he wasn't able to keep. The second escape, in 2015, was even more of an incredible feat. It involved a sophisticated tunnel dug from the prison showers to a construction site over a mile away.
This is the moment Joaquin El Chapo Guzman makes the Mexican government look ridiculous. Pacing up and down in his cell, calmly, waiting. These are the last images of Guzman before he makes the most daring escape in recent history. At one point, he appears to bend forward, focusing on something in the floor of the shower.
These escapes not only embarrassed the Mexican government, but also showed just how cunning and sneaky El Chapo really is. How does something like this happen 2 times? He literally slipped out right from under the noses of the officials who had promised they would not let this happen again.
The escape alert was activated, he said, and the prison staff proceeded to check the cell. Inside, they found a tunnel. A very elaborate tunnel with ventilation and lighting, even a rail system to transport tools and dirt. The tunnel began inside a house under construction a mile away from the prison.
We now know that he has both the ability and the allies to outsmart even the most secure prison systems. And while he was on the run for so much of his life, he was ultimately able to hide from the authorities forever.
The most wanted drug lord in the world, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, led away by authorities after 6 months on the run.
The day that El Chapo was finally captured after so much time and effort to find him was a day that few could forget. His face was plastered on every news channel, magazine, and newspaper. It was time for a celebration.
The Mexican drug lord known as El Chapo appeared before a federal judge right here in New York City.
This has been a long time coming. Joaquin Guzman was first sought by U.S. authorities 2 decades ago. He's now being arraigned on charges of running a massive and murderous drug trafficking operation.
El Chapo has finally been taken down, convicted, and sentenced. He received life in prison with no chance of parole. It was a day that many had been waiting on.
It's a sentence from which there is no escape and no return. This conviction is a victory for the American people who have suffered so long and so much, while Guzman made billions pouring poison over our southern border.
Now that he is imprisoned, keeping him from managing yet another escape is the #1 priority for the staff at the ADX Florence Maximum Security Prison in Colorado. He's been there since 2019, and officials have taken every single precaution and more to help ensure he is never getting out again.
He's locked up in the most reliable prison we have in Mexico, and certainly once bitten, twice shy. we will take our precautions in this case.
But what does El Chapo's life behind bars really look like? It's obviously much different now than the intense but exciting life he had for years. Those days were spent running his drug empire, keeping the cops off his tail, and enjoying his mind-blowing net worth of $1 billion. Today, El Chapo's days are much more dull, but at the same time, full of extreme conditions. This includes almost constant isolation and the most stringent security measures that you could possibly ever find.
I assure you, no tunnel will be built leading to his bathroom.
Just to give you a sense of how secure this area is, there are cameras around here that can read a newspaper a block away.
The Supermax prison where El Chapo lives out his days is the last place that you would ever want to find yourself. It is known for its harsh conditions and strict security measures. Inmates spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. The time that they are allowed to interact with other people and even enjoy any type of recreation is extremely limited. El Chapo's cell is monitored constantly, and his every move is scrutinized by guards. The second that he tries anything, they are going to know. He literally wouldn't be able to get away with stepping even one toe out of line. El Chapo likely knew the moment that he was finally captured for the last time that he could expect his life to look something similar to this. You can see the fear and dread in his eyes by just looking at this clip of him shortly after he was taken into custody.
This just-released footage of El Chapo shows the drug lord looking teary-eyed and in shock after he was flown to New York. He now faces a life sentence at Supermax prison in Colorado, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Its infamous inmates include the Boston Marathon bomber, the Unabomber, and the shoe bomber who tried to bring down a plane.
El Chapo knew that he was about to be sent to a place where they keep the very worst of the worst prisoners alive. These are people who are so evil and so horrible that you wouldn't want to be within miles of them, much less living day in and day out in the same facility as them. Despite his high-profile status, El Chapo is not even the most dangerous prisoner that is currently imprisoned at ADX Florence. Some people have called this facility no better than literal hell.
This is the most secretive prison in America. No one is allowed inside, and the only pictures we have are from federal lawsuits.
A prisoner lives in a cell the size of a bathroom. It has a shower, a toilet, a concrete slab covered with a thin mattress. In the rare time outside, prisoners are kept in cages.
It is as stark can be. It was not designed with humanity in mind.
The isolation, the solitary, day to day, you're trying to keep your basic humanity from slipping through your fingers.
The facility houses some of the most ruthless, cruel, and evil criminals in the United States. These are people who have committed truly heinous crimes, not just outside in the real world, but inside the walls of the prison.
It's a very disorienting experience. You go through a maze of locks, doors, sally ports, surveillance. The staff are in these control rooms with these panels of lights, sort of like the Starship Enterprise, and they're controlling remotely what's going on and intensely monitoring what is happening with the inmates, who are mostly just in their cell.
The history of this prison is pretty interesting. It was built because officials sought a solution for managing violent inmates serving life sentences without resorting to executions. This was after multiple guards lost their lives while trying to control the worst of the worst prisoners. It opened in November 1994 under the Clinton administration's tough-on-crime policy, offering jobs and economic benefits to the surrounding community. This prison has been considered pretty controversial due to its solitary confinement model that many people don't agree with and view as inhumane. Inmates, most of whom are transferred from other facilities, undergo a strict 3-year program of isolation, monitored activities, and limited privileges. The prison's design prevents escape attempts and self-harm with extensive surveillance and security measures. But for the foreseeable future, at least, Florence Supermax remains operational, with occasional transfers and settlements to address the concerns of the public. Despite criticisms, its role in managing high-risk offenders is seen as necessary by authorities and many government figures. This seemed like the perfect place to lock up El Chapo and throw away the key. El Chapo has proven time and time again that he is incredibly smart and capable of just about anything. In the past, even when he was locked up behind bars, he still found ways to control what was going on outside of prison walls. He knew how to make connections and manipulate people into getting what he wanted. If there was anyone who could ever escape a maximum security prison, even one like ADX, it most likely would be this man. But if you take a look at this former drug lord's daily life in ADX Florence, you would quickly see that the measures taken by the staff to prevent any further escape attempts are incredibly extreme. Not even the smallest details are overlooked. From surveillance cameras to razor wire fences and armed guards, the facility leaves little room for even the king of escapes to maneuver. El Chapo gets no privacy, no dignity, and although he spends almost every waking hour by himself, he is very truly alone. This is because he is constantly being watched. Let's take a closer look inside the place that El Chapo now calls home.
How difficult would it be for him to even try to escape?
Well, no one has so far since 1994 when they opened. But an El Chapo type of confinement at the Supermax, he will be in his cell about 23 hours a day. He'll have cameras all over him.
So, is this the place where the former drug lord will be living out the rest of his days? Right now, this seems like the most likely scenario. While there may be a slim chance for him to be transferred to a less severe prison one day in the future, based on good behavior, it probably won't happen. By this point, authorities have surely learned from all the mistakes made in the past and know that giving El Chapo even a small amount of leniency could lead to truly horrible, dangerous results. In May of 2022, El Chapo made one last attempt to try to get out of prison. He complained about how he had been treated and accused American prosecutors of being unfair to him. But that's not all the letter said. El Chapo also implied that U.S. prison officials are mistreating him, citing his history of escapes as the reason for their behavior. He says that they are preventing him from receiving attorney documents that are necessary for new court motions. So far, it hasn't led to anything he was probably hoping it would.
He lost his trial, he lost on appeal, but this is a mechanism for him to say, despite all of that, I'm still entitled to a reversal of my conviction and a new trial because my constitutional rights were violated.
It seems like his days of manipulation are finally over. Meanwhile, El Chapo is reportedly still trying to communicate with his attorneys. He hopes that they will help him out with delivering important legal documents to his prison cell. This is all part of his efforts to devise a legal strategy that could lead to his unlikely release. The world can rest assured that El Chapo's prospects for ever being free again remain very bleak. Most people would probably agree that where El Chapo is right now is exactly where he deserves to be and where he needs to stay forever.